My name's Callie Jean Whitmore. I'm 35, and I came home from a 9-day haul expecting ribs on the grill and Wyatt waiting on the porch. Instead, I found my life scattered across the front lawn, boots, bras, photo albums getting soaked in a slow Arkansas rain. He didn't text, didn't call. Just tossed me out like an old receipt. And the kicker? He was inside the house flipping burgers for some woman with fake nails and my old robe on. Drop a comment if you've ever come home to find out someone decided your place wasn't yours anymore. Hit like if you've ever swallowed rage so thick it burned going down. Because what happened next made me realize some breakups don't end with words. They end with silence. And steel-toe boots sinking in the mud. Let me take you back to the moment it all started, because I didn't just lose a man that day. I lost the last excuse I had for staying small. It took me a second to register what I was seeing. The front lawn was scattered with pieces of my life like a garage sale no one wanted to attend. My work boots still caked with red Oklahoma dust sat half submerged in a muddy puddle near the driveway. A framed photo of me and Dad, the one from my first solo drive, was face down in the wet grass. The glass cracked right across his smile. Boxes some open, some crushed fold-out clothes, shampoo bottles, half-used candles. And Wyatt? He was at the grill, flipping ribs like it was any other Saturday. Laughing. With her. She was barefoot on my porch in my flannel robe. One I'd had since my first winter run, when I came home with frozen hair and Wyatt said I looked like hell but still smelled like diesel and cinnamon. Now she was wearing it like it came with the house. I didn't say a word at first. Didn't honk. Didn't yell. Just climbed down from the truck slow, my knees stiff from the drive. The air smelled like charcoal, wet earth, and betrayal. Wyatt finally looked up. Smirked. "Didn't expect you back till Sunday, Cal," he said. Wiping his hands on a rag like this was a surprise visit from an old friend. "Guess I made good time," I answered, my voice flat. "Yeah, well," he gestured to the lawn like it was some home improvement project. "Figured I'd save you the trouble. We needed the space." The woman giggled. I looked down at my steel toe caked in mud, water creeping in through a loose seam. "You're serious," I said. He shrugged. "It just wasn't workin' no more. You're always gone. And me and Riss. We got a rhythm now." "Riss." She waved like we were neighbors sharing a fence. "You didn't think to call, text, something?" I asked. Wyatt had the audacity to frown. "Didn't want to fight. Besides, you got everything you need out here. You can grab what you want and go." "Ah. And what's missing?" I asked, glancing over the mess. "Nothing major. Just sentimental crap." I crouched to pick up a box of tools I kept from my dad's garage. It was damp, cardboard slouching under its own weight. Inside, the socket wrench set was already rusting. I felt my jaw clench so hard it cracked. But I didn't scream. Didn't throw anything. Didn't make a scene for the folks across the street, peeking out behind half-closed curtains. Instead, I stood up slow, wiped rain off my forehead with the back of my arm, and turned to Wyatt. "Appreciate you keeping the ribs warm," I said. He blinked. Then I turned and started loading what I could into the cab. That porch? That grill? That robe? Let her have it all. Let her try to carry the weight of a man who needed someone else's work boots to keep his feet dry. I was halfway through grabbing the second box when I noticed Marlene across the street with her phone out. Recording. She didn't wave. Didn't smile. Just nodded soft, slow. Like she knew what this moment meant. I didn't cry. Not then. The tears came later when I peeled off those boots in the back of the truck and saw a note tucked in the sock, something I must have shoved in there months ago. It wasn't from Wyatt. It was from my dad. A folded paper from years back, yellowed and creased. In his shaky pen. "When they stop seeing your worth, don't argue. Leave. You've got what you need. Check the glove box. D." I sat there for a long time. Rain tapping on the windshield. Hand on the key around my neck. The one I'd worn for years and never used. Until now. I didn't leave right away. I sat in the cab for a long time, rain tracing slow lines down the windshield, engine off, hands frozen on the steering wheel like my whole body forgot how to move. Everything I owned, everything that mattered, anyway, was soaked or broken or already replaced. The ribs on the grill, the porch swing, the flannel robe. I could let all that go. But the way he smirked when he said, "We needed the space," that sat in my chest like a lead weight. I finally turned the key. The rig rumbled back to life, and I rolled away from the house like it was just another truck stop. Didn't look in the mirror, didn't wave. Just drove. My boots were still damp. The smell of mud and old coffee filled the cab. Somewhere along the state line, I hit the overnight rest lot. Same place I'd parked before, same hum of diesel engines idling around me. But this time, the silence inside felt different. Like I'd been emptied out. I leaned back, rubbed my eyes, and reached for the old flip-down compartment above the passenger seat. Pulled out my phone. Battery almost dead, but still had 1 bar of signal. I tapped into my saved voicemails, not really sure why. Most were company alerts or Tina leaving dumb jokes after too much boxed wine. But one from my dad sat at the bottom of the list. I hadn't listened to it in over a year. I pressed play. "Hey baby hawk, just checking in. Weather's turning, don't forget to rotate your tires before that Kansas run. Also, there's leftover cornbread in the freezer if you stop home. Be safe, call when you land." Click. I closed my eyes. He always called me Baby Hawk. Said I had a quiet way of circling people before deciding whether to trust them. Guess I circled too long this time, I muttered. The voicemail didn't bring tears. Not yet. It just made the air feel heavier. Like he was still somewhere nearby, watching from a distance, waiting to see what I'd do. I scrolled through messages. One from Tina, time-stamped just 20 minutes earlier. "Tina. Girl, have you seen what they posted? You need to call me right now. I'm serious." I didn't want to call. Didn't want to hear what was out there. But I tapped the screen anyway. She picked up before the first ring ended. "Callie Jean Whitmore," she barked. "I'm driving over there right now if you don't tell me where you are." "I'm fine," I said. Voice sounded hollow even to me. "No, you're not. Wyatt posted some garbage story about you flipping out and damaging property. And that woman he's with? She's got a picture up of your damn robe, talking about how peace finally returned. You want me to send it to you? Number. They're painting you like some deranged ex who couldn't take a breakup. Half the town is already commenting." "I don't care what they think," I said, though I wasn't sure that was true. Silence. Then Tina asked, gently, "Where are you?" "Rest stop outside Pine Bluff." She sighed. "You headed anywhere?" My eyes drifted to the key around my neck. The one I'd worn for 3 years. The one my dad gave me before he died, tucked inside an envelope marked "When the time is right." I had never taken it off. Never used it either. Until now. "Yeah," I said. "I'm going to the shop." Tina was quiet for a beat. "You sure?" "No," I admitted. "But I think that's where he wanted me to go." "Then I'll bring sweet tea and a flashlight," she said. "See you in the morning." After we hung up, I sat there a minute longer. The steel of the key felt warm between my fingers. The chain it hung on was frayed near the clasp, like it had been waiting too long to matter again. I thought about all the times I put Wyatt first. Paid for the bills when he got laid off. Skipped runs to make his doctor appointments. Cooked dinner after 13-hour shifts because he couldn't stand takeout again. And now he was serving grilled corn and pulled pork to a woman who didn't know the first thing about patching drywall. I should have been angry. But mostly, I just felt done. Somewhere around 3 a.m., I pulled back onto the road. No radio. No music. Just the sound of tires on wet asphalt and the thought of an old garage my dad built with his bare hands. I hadn't stepped inside since his funeral. But I still had the key. And maybe, just maybe, that garage had something left in it for me. Something more than broken promises and rusted tools. Maybe it had the start of a life I didn't have to beg anyone to stay for. I pulled into the gravel lot just after sunrise. The fog hadn't burned off yet, and the garage looked smaller than I remembered. The paint had peeled back around the windows, and one gutter hung loose like a tired arm. But the padlock was still there, old, rusted, and waiting. I slipped the key from around my neck. It clicked like it had been used yesterday. The door creaked open, and that smell hit me all at once: sawdust, motor oil, leather, and time. I stood in the doorway and just breathed. The light filtered in slow through the dusty windows, catching on shelves lined with old toolboxes and labeled coffee cans. It looked almost untouched. Dad's workbench sat against the far wall, just how he left it. Sharpie notes scribbled across the wood. One still read: "Called and forget torque before paint." I took a shaky step inside. Everything about the space felt like him. The quiet hum. The mess that wasn't really a mess. The way he always said, "You don't need much, just need it to work." I walked over to the bench, fingers trailing the grain of the wood, and that's when I saw it. A black metal lockbox, center of the bench, marked in white paint pen. "CJ, when she's ready." My breath caught. I reached for it like it might disappear. The lock had no code. Just a tiny brass key taped to the side. I broke the tape, turned the key, and opened the lid. Inside was a folded deed. A photograph of me at age 16, welding helmet crooked on my head. And a note in my dad's handwriting. "If she's opening this, then she made the right choice. Property title is clean, utilities off for now. Let her build what she wants. She's earned it." Dad. I sat down on the stool and just stared at it. He had bought me a house. Not a fancy one. Not some new build dream. But a place. A structure. A stake in something. And he never told me. Because he knew someday I'd need it. Because he knew I'd try to stay somewhere too long out of loyalty. Because he knew me better than I knew myself. My hands were shaking. Not from fear this time, but from the sudden release of holding it all in. I pulled out the photograph. God, I looked so proud in it. Helmet too big, mouth half open like I was mid-laugh. Dad used to keep that picture in his wallet, said it was the moment he knew I'd be all right. I stayed in that garage for a while. Let the warmth of it crawl back into my bones. Let the silence wrap around me like a blanket. There were still oil stains on the floor from the year we rebuilt that old Civic engine. My initials were carved into the cabinet drawer beside his. And on the pegboard above the bench, a small yellow sticky note had survived 3 Arkansas summers. "Cal, you already know how. Just remember you can." I closed my eyes and let the tears come. Not loud, not messy. Just slow. Like the rain from the day before. Soft and steady, soaking into something deeper. Eventually, I gathered the contents of the box, folded the note, and slipped the key back onto my necklace. The weight of it felt different now. Not just a reminder, a promise. The house was just a few miles away. I'd driven past the neighborhood before, never thinking it had anything to do with me. But apparently, it had everything to do with me. I grabbed the garage key off the wall hook. Still labeled shop, front lock. Still cold in my hand. I backed out slow, taking one last look at the bench, the cans, the mess. And I said, out loud, "Thanks, Dad. I'll take it from here." As I turned to leave, the morning light caught something wedged behind the door. A folded utility map and a crumpled receipt from a hardware store dated 3 months before he passed. Paint, sage gray. Trim, bone white. Kabinelhändlers, brushed nickel. Shower fixture, Ada rail. For CJ. Bathroom. He had planned the details. Even the bathroom. I laughed through tears. Of course he had. The house sat at the end of a gravel loop road, shaded by 2 stubborn oaks that hadn't dropped their leaves yet. From the outside, it looked tired. One shutter hung a little crooked. The porch railing had a crack near the bottom. But it was standing. And it was mine. I parked under the carport and just sat. The kind of sitting you do when you're not sure if you're supposed to knock, even though the place belongs to you. My name was on the deed. I'd seen it. Touched it. Still, I sat there with my hand on the ignition for 5 minutes before I cut the engine. The front steps creaked under my boots. When I slid the key into the lock, it stuck for a second like it hadn't been used in a while. And then, it turned. I opened the door to silence. No television. No smell of burnt coffee. No Wyatt calling from the kitchen asking if I grabbed creamer. Just dust and light and space. The air inside was still, like the house had been holding its breath for someone to come back. The living room was empty, except for a folded chair and a cardboard box labeled spare parts. The floor creaked differently than the one I used to sweep back at Wyatt's. This one sounded like it wanted me there. I didn't explore right away. I just stood in the doorway until my knees started to ache. Then I heard a screen door slam. A few seconds later, a voice called out from across the gravel. "You movin' in, or just visiting ghosts?" I turned. Across the way, on the little duplex porch labeled 3B, stood a woman in a loose floral housecoat and a head wrap that shimmered in the sun. She held a sweating glass of iced tea in one hand, a paper plate with 2 thick cornbread slices in the other. "Come on over before that dust swallows you," she said. "I've been watching that house sit empty too long." Ugh. I walked over slow, still holding my keys like proof I belonged. She handed me the plate first. "You look like you haven't eaten in a minute." "I haven't, actually," I said. "Thought so. I'm Laverne. Been here 26 years. That unit was your daddy's, right?" "Yeah, he left it for me." Her eyes softened. He was a quiet man, but he nodded every morning when he left. Always respectful. Said his daughter was the only one who knew how to fix a flat without cussing. "Artaker." I laughed, for the first time in days. "That sounds about right." "Bet it feels strange, being back," she said, sipping her tea. "It feels like I shouldn't be allowed to have something this steady." She tilted her head. "Why not?" I looked down. The cornbread had gone untouched in my lap. I just got kicked out of someone else's house. Guess I got used to being somewhere I had to earn space in. Laverne didn't blink. Didn't fill the air with some fake comfort line either. She just leaned back in her lawn chair and said, "Let me tell you something. Men like to believe they're landlords of your worth. But baby, that house was never theirs to lease. It was always yours." That hit me right in the chest. I nodded, but I didn't know how to answer. She reached over, touched my wrist gently, then added, "And that man who tossed you? Don't think too hard about him. That house y'all lived in? It was his ex-wife's name on the deed. Always was." He blinked. "What?" She nodded once. "Her mama's, originally. He just stayed put after the divorce. Made it feel like his." I let out a sound halfway between a laugh and a scoff. So I was never even living in his house. Just another squatter in someone else's illusion of power. "Eat your cornbread," Laverne said gently. "It's still warm." We sat there in silence for a while, the kind that feels earned. By the time I stood up, the sun had dipped behind the trees and shadows stretched long across the yard. "Thanks, Miss Laverne." "You're welcome, Callie. You let me know if you need anything, light bulbs, Wi-Fi password, or just someone to say your name when you forgot it matters." I walked back across the gravel slower this time. My feet didn't feel like they were sneaking anymore. Inside, I dropped my duffel on the hardwood and looked around. No furniture. No familiar smells. But no ghosts either. I grabbed one of Dad's old shop blankets from the truck, spread it out on the floor, and laid down right there in the living room. No television hum. No footsteps pacing. Just quiet. Mine. I locked the door behind me. Not because I was scared. Because I could. The next morning started like something close to peace. Sunlight through the kitchen blinds. A chipped mug from the garage, filled with instant coffee. Silence that didn't feel heavy. I sat on the back steps, watching a bird wrestle with a piece of dryer lint in the yard. It felt good. Almost steady. Then my phone buzzed. "Tina. Girl, you seen it yet?" I didn't need to ask what it was. But I tapped the screen anyway. Signal was weak, but it loaded fast enough to gut me. There it was. A photo of Wyatt at the grill, tongs in hand, ribs on the flame, beer in the other. Behind him, Marissa in my robe. laughing, holding a paper plate like it was a holiday. The caption? Finally peace, good food, and people who actually respect you. New chapters, old drama. My stomach flipped. Not from heartbreak. From the way that sentence crawled under my skin. I kept scrolling. The comments were worse. Didn't she go nuts and throw his stuff out first? Can't fix crazy. Glad you found peace. That woman always looked angry. I stopped at one from Marissa herself. Some women are just bitter when a man realizes he deserves better. I'm not mad about being the upgrade. I locked my phone and set it face down on the step. My jaw tightened. Not just at the lies, but at how easy it was for them to spread. It's strange how a photo can rewrite truth. How smoke and smiles and sunlight can erase the sound of someone getting tossed out in the rain. They were building a version of me that never existed. A bitter, unstable woman. A ghost of a story they could cook ribs over. I felt the sting behind my eyes and swallowed hard. Don't let them spin your silence into permission, Dad used to say. Quiet doesn't mean agreement. I picked up my phone and called Tina. She answered on the first ring. You saw it? Yeah. They're making you out like you keyed his truck and screamed through the neighborhood. I stayed quiet. You didn't, right? I let out a small breath. Number. I know. Just had to hear you say it. Another pause. Then she added, you don't have to clap back, but you can correct the story. I wasn't sure what that meant at first. But later that afternoon, I opened the old laptop Dad kept in the garage office. It still worked. Slow as molasses, but it worked. I logged in to a new profile. No selfies. No snark. Just a photo of the garage door with my welding gloves hanging on the hook. Callie Whitmore. Rebuilding with steel and quiet. Rebuilding with steel and quiet. I posted 2 pictures. One of the shop bench, freshly cleaned. One of the deed, folded, open name circled. No caption. No rage. Just the truth. Tina texted not long after. You just flipped the whole story without saying a single word. I didn't answer. Just sat there in the half-light, hands dusty from sorting bolts and screws, letting the weight settle. They could call me bitter. They could paint whatever version helped them sleep. But the only story that mattered now was the one I chose to build. One plank, one weld, one quiet post at a time. That afternoon, I was sorting through the last few boxes from the garage. Most of them were full of hardware bolts, wire, cracked sockets I could probably salvage. But one box felt different. The handwriting on the side wasn't Dad's. It was mine. I had labeled it with a black Sharpie, all caps. Keep Mom's stuff. I hadn't opened it in years. The top was sealed with yellowed packing tape, and for a second I just stared at it. Felt my chest get tight. Then I took a breath, found a pocket knife, and slid it open. The first thing I saw was a framed photo. Me and Mama, right before my 12th birthday. She had on her peach lipstick and the scarf she only wore to church. I was squinting at the camera, missing a front tooth. She had her arm around my shoulder like she could hold the whole world in one hand. I sat down on the floor, cross-legged, photo in my lap. Everything in the house went still. The smell of that old box dust, faint perfume, something like cedar pulled me back. To being small. To watching her sing to herself while folding towels. To the sound of her humming in the kitchen when she didn't think anyone was listening. I hadn't thought about her in detail in a long time. Grief can do that. It tucks itself into corners so you can keep functioning. But sitting there, staring at that photo, I felt it break through. The weight of her absence. I whispered, "You tell me I was worth more than what I settled for." And I meant it. I remembered how she used to say, "Baby, your backbone's made of steel. You just forget sometimes." I'd forgotten for years. I held that photo so tight my fingers cramped. And for a few minutes, I let myself cry in a way I hadn't since the funeral. Not from fresh hurt, but from all the pieces I'd buried so I could keep driving. Keep working. Keep pretending I didn't miss her every day. At the bottom of the box, I found a folded envelope. Old, faded, marked in Dad's writing. For CJ when she's really lost. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a letter. If you're reading this, you're probably fighting ghosts I can't help you chase. Your mom and I tried our best to give you what we never had room to believe you mattered. Don't let some manor job or silence convince you you're small. You've got her fire and my stubborn, and that's enough to build your own peace. You don't have to fight for scraps anymore. The world is wide. Make your own table. Love you always. Dad. I pressed the paper to my chest and closed my eyes. For the first time since that day on the lawn, I felt grounded. Not just mad. Not just floating. Rooted. I stood up slow, wiped my face on my sleeve, and looked around the empty house. Bare walls. No furniture. No plan. But I had a photo of my mom smiling like the sun. A letter from my dad reminding me I had every right to take up space. And a house that, for the first time, didn't feel like a charity hand-me-down. It felt like a foundation. I set the photo on the mantel. Then I grabbed a broom and started sweeping. Not because the dust bothered me, but because I had decided this place was going to breathe again. And maybe so would I. It was a Tuesday afternoon when he came back. Hot enough that the porch boards had started to creak in the sun. I was working in the garage just trying to fix up a busted clamp I found buried in a box of my dad's spare parts when I heard the sound of tires crunching gravel out front. Didn't think much of it at first. Could have been Tina. Could have been Laverne's grandkids. Then came the knock. 3 taps on the screen door. Too familiar. Too slow. I wiped my hands on a rag and stepped into the front room. And there he was. Wyatt. Wearing that same worn-out ball cap. Holding a plastic gas station cup of sweet tea like it was some peace offering. "Hey, Cal," he said, like it was casual. Like it wasn't the first time I'd seen him since he tossed my boots in the yard. I didn't say anything. Just opened the door halfway and waited. He shifted on his feet. "I know this is awkward," he said. "I just figured. I was in the area. Thought I'd check on you. Check on me. Like I was a sprained ankle or a dead battery." "I'm fine," I said. "You can go." He held out the drink. "Thought you might want something cold." "I've got my own tea," I said. A beat passed. He cleared his throat. "Look, I didn't come here to fight. Things got messy. Marissa, she moved out last week. Took her cousin's trailer up near Mountain View. I didn't flinch. Didn't ask why. Didn't offer sympathy. She said I had baggage I wasn't ready to unpack," he added with a humorless laugh. Guess she was right. I watched him struggle to fill the silence. He looked smaller somehow. Softer. Like someone who'd been sleeping in his truck a little too long. "You know," he said, "I thought maybe we could talk, maybe grab lunch sometime." I raised an eyebrow. "You looking for closure, Wyatt? Or a couch?" His smile cracked. "That's not fair. Neither was throwing my stuff in the yard." "Oh." His mouth opened, then shut again. I took a breath, rested one hand against the doorframe. Not to lean. Just to steady the weight of the moment. "You made your choice," I said. "And now I've made mine. I'm not interested in pretending we can just backpedal through what happened." He looked past me into the living room. Saw the clean floors, the photo of my mom on the mantel. "This your dad's place?" I nodded. He nodded too, slower. "Nice. Real nice." Something in his face shifted. Jealousy, maybe. Or just the sting of seeing me stand on solid ground without him. "I'm not here to beg," he said, his voice dropping low. I guess I thought maybe we could be in each other's corner again, at least talk." I let the silence hang. Then I said, "You don't get to use my peace as a hiding place." His eyes flashed just for a second. But he knew. He knew that part of me, the part that would have softened, offered shelter, cooked for 'twasn't there anymore. "That's how it is?" he asked. "That's how it's gotta be." He took a slow step back, lowered the tea to his side. "Well, all right then." I nodded once. "Take care, Wyatt." He hesitated like he wanted to say more, but didn't. I closed the door gently. Not a slam. Just, done. I stood there for a second, listening to his footsteps fade down the porch. Then I turned the deadbolt. Not out of fear. Out of certainty. The key was buried in a glove box I hadn't touched in over a year. Labeled with faded marker. Midline storage, Unit 312. I almost tossed it last month. Almost. But something told me not to. The lot sat on the edge of town, half paved and half potholed, tucked between an abandoned mattress store and a signless strip mall. I hadn't been here since before Wyatt lost his job. He said he needed a place to keep overflow stuff we'd circle back to when we leveled up. Time is bad. Funny thing is, I don't remember ever agreeing to rent it. But my name was on the file. And the overdue bill was mine, too. I walked past rows of rusted metal doors, until I found 312. Same dent on the corner. Same faded green latch. I unlocked it and pulled the roll-up door halfway. Dust bloomed in the air, thick and stale. Inside, boxes I didn't remember packing. An old toaster. A boosted recliner. A plastic tub labeled, Tools, CJ. That's what caught me. I popped the lid. Inside was my welding helmet scuffed, still smelling faintly of burnt metal. My gloves. The leather apron my dad gave me the Christmas before he passed. And a small, crumpled envelope wedged in the corner. I opened it. It was a birthday card. From Tina. One I never received. It read, "You deserve more than just thanks for paying the bills. Proud of you always. Don't forget who you are." No postmark. No stamp. It had been sealed but never sent. Which meant someone Wyatt had gotten it before I ever did. And buried it here. I stared at it for a long time. Then looked at the gloves. The helmet. The silence. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part just shut down. Like I couldn't carry one more piece of betrayal in my hands. But instead of crying, I put the gloves on. They still fit. That was enough. I packed what mattered into the truck, bed me gear, the card, a few tools I thought I'd lost. The rest? I left. As I slid the door shut, thunder cracked behind the trees. Big storm clouds were rolling in. Arkansas summer storms don't ask permission. They just arrive. I got back on the road just as the first drops hit the windshield. Wipers thumped slow. I glanced at the card on the passenger seat. Then at my reflection in the mirror mud-smeared cheek, welding gloves still on. I thought about all the things I'd done for Wyatt that he never asked for. All the parts of myself I handed over, hoping it'd make him stay. All the ways I downplayed my work like it was just a hobby. And all the things he tried to tuck away where I wouldn't find them. The rain came harder. But I didn't flinch. I turned onto the highway and whispered, "Not this time." The rain had passed, but the air still smelled like soaked pine and fresh dirt. I was out front sanding down a trailer hitch mount I'd pulled from the junk pile behind the garage. Didn't plan to fix it, just needed something to keep my hands moving. The kind of quiet work that lets your brain rest without really resting. That's when I heard gravel crunch behind me. Those welds still hold like they used to? I looked up and saw a man I didn't know leaning against the fence. Mid-60s, tall and sun-worn. Had that kind of posture only ex-firefighters and lifelong coaches carry. Firm, but not pushy. "I haven't tested him lately," I said, brushing my gloves off. "But I wouldn't bet against him." He nodded with half a smile. "I'm Robert. Laverne's brother. Just moved into the guest house while my knee heals up." I stepped forward and shook his hand. "Grip like thick rope. Callie. She mentioned you were working on getting the shop back in shape," he said. "I've got a busted trailer hitch on my old Dodge. Can't haul a thing right now. You take side work?" It was such a simple question. But it hit like a bell ringing in an empty church. Do I? I hadn't said yes to anything in a while. Not out loud. Not fully. "I could take a look," I said slowly. "No promises till I see the damage." He grinned. "Fair enough. I'll bring it by tomorrow if you're around." And just like that, something shifted. Not big. Not dramatic, but real. The next morning, Tina showed up unannounced, car full of groceries and her smile already loaded with mischief. "What's this?" I asked, catching a bag of apples before it fell. "We're celebrating." "Celebrating what?" She plopped a receipt down on the counter like it was a trophy. It was a paid order. 12 custom steel firewood racks. Delivery due in 4 weeks. Client: Smoky Creek Campground, South Loop office. "Miss Laverne's nephew runs the place now," Tina said. "They've been looking for someone to build racks since their old guy retired." My jaw tightened. "Tina, I haven't even..." "Don't even finish that sentence. We already told them you're the best damn welder this town forgot." My first instinct was to push back. Say I wasn't ready. That I didn't have the right tools, or space, or confidence. But then I remembered the card Tina sent. The one Wyatt buried. The one that said, "Don't forget who you are." I exhaled and smiled, just a little. I guess I better get started then. By the end of the week, I had 2 racks half welded and my garage smelled like scorched steel and cedar oil. It was a smell I missed. The smell of purpose. Robert came by with a box of bolts and a cooler full of Gatorade. "Looks like you're back in business," he said. I nodded. It didn't feel like back. It felt like something new. Something mine. One of the racks had a little extra space on the end rail. I took a piece of scrap and welded a phrase across it in thin steel. "Bend, don't break." Didn't plan it. Didn't sketch it. It just came out. That night, I stood outside the garage and looked at the row of racks, still warm from the welds. This wasn't about proving anything to Wyatt. Or showing the town I could survive. This was me, making something that held its own weight. I looked at the stars overhead, rubbed a smudge of soot off my jaw, and whispered, "Let's see how far I can drive this thing." The sun was barely up when I heard the garage door rattle. Not shake. Not creak. Rattle. Like someone was tugging at the side handle with more frustration than finesse. I set my coffee down on the windowsill and stepped into my boots. Didn't rush. Didn't panic. By the time I rounded the corner of the house, I already knew. There he was. Wyatt. Leaning against the garage frame like it belonged to him. His hoodie was stained. Eyes red like he hadn't slept in days. And his pickup, still that dented blue Ford, was parked crooked in the driveway. "What are you doing here?" I asked, calm as I could manage. He didn't answer right away. Just looked me up and down like he was measuring what kind of mood I was in. "I came to get what's mine," he finally said, voice low. "My drill set. My air compressor. My dad's torque wrench." I crossed my arms. "There's nothing here that belongs to you." "Don't do that," he snapped, stepping forward. "You know damn well I left my stuff here. Before you ran off. Wyatt, you dumped my life in the rain while you were grilling ribs with someone wearing my robe." I said flatly. "You don't get to circle back now like I'm holding your Christmas decorations hostage." His jaw clenched. His hands balled into fists at his sides. "You've been running around acting like some hometown hero," he said. "Posting pictures, playing Weld Queen while people out here think I'm the villain." From ID. I stepped between him and the garage door. "I'm not playing anything. I'm just building." He stared hard at me. Then past me. Toward the open window in the garage where he used to sit and watch me work. I saw the flicker in his eyes. The kind that says, "I want back in," even if he doesn't know why. "I ain't here to start something," he said, backing off slightly. "I just need my stuff. I can't keep living out of the truck." That part caught me off guard. I hadn't expected honesty. But that didn't change anything. "There's nothing in there with your name on it," I said. "And if you come back again without calling, I'll have no problem calling the sheriff." He scoffed. "You serious?" "I'm tired, Wyatt. I'm tired of having to prove this space is mine." He blinked at that. Like he didn't know what to do with a version of me that didn't shake, didn't shout, didn't retreat. "You always thought you were better than me," he muttered. "Number. I just finally stopped thinking I had to shrink myself to match you." For a second, it got real quiet. Even the birds held their breath. Then he looked down, adjusted his hoodie, and mumbled, "Guess I got my answer." He turned back to his truck, kicked the tire once, and climbed in. Didn't peel out. Didn't say goodbye. Just drove off like a man who'd run out of places to test. I locked the garage behind me. Then stood in the center of it, taking it all in. The smell of steel and old oil. The hooks with my gloves. The new racks lined up by the wall. This place had once been a workshop for two. Then a hiding place for one. Now, it was mine. The next morning, I walked into the courthouse, clutching the restraining order paperwork. The clerk at the desk didn't flinch when I slid it across. She just looked up at me, kind but matter of fact, and said, "Good for you, on." The last of the firewood racks cooled on the shop floor as the sun dipped low behind the oaks. 12 orders, all done. My hands ached, and my back was stiff. But I hadn't felt that kind of good exhaustion in years. Robert came by just before dusk. He ran a hand along the weld seams and gave a low whistle. "Clean work," he said. "Better than the guys Smoky Creek used to hire. They'll call you again." "I won't complain if they do," I said. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You do know you could charge more, right?" I smiled. "One thing at a time." He gave me a nod like he understood what that meant. That evening, I heard laughter outside. Not loud or rowdy, just warm. Steady. When I stepped out back, Tina was stringing a few old cafe lights between the trees. Laverne sat nearby with a folding table draped in a yellow checkered cloth. 2 camp chairs. A stack of paper plates. A half-dozen mason jars. "What's all this?" I asked. "A work party," Tina said. "Or maybe a welcome home party. Take your pick." "I didn't approve this," I said, half grinning. "Too bad. You've got neighbors now who pay attention. Deal with it." Soon Robert joined us. Then 2 women from the church down the road. A teenager I didn't know brought over a pan of peach cobbler and mumbled something about "heard you fix trailers." They brought folding chairs and lawn blankets. No fanfare. No speeches. Just laughter and second helpings and the kind of quiet comfort I didn't realize I missed. Somewhere around dessert, Laverne disappeared into her house and came back holding a flat package wrapped in brown paper. She handed it to me with both hands. "This was in your daddy's closet," she said. "He asked me to keep it safe. Said you'd know when you were ready." I peeled back the paper slow. Inside was a framed welding certificate. Issued in his name. Dated 35 years back. Tucked behind the glass was a photo of him standing in front of this very garage. His arm around me. Me maybe 5 years old, smudged with grease and smiling crooked with one front tooth missing. I pressed a hand to my chest. The laughter around me faded into something softer. Like background music on a memory you didn't know was still playing. "He believed in you long before you knew how to," Laverne said. I nodded, but didn't speak. The words wouldn't come. I set the frame on the workbench later that night. Right beside my gloves. After everyone left, I sat out back alone with the porch light buzzing and my boots unlaced. And I realized something. I wasn't rebuilding anymore. I was building. Not from broken. But from knowing. The campground ordered another set. This time, twice the size. 12 racks turned into 24. And they wanted them before fall hit full swing. I stood in the garage that morning, blueprints scattered on the bench, coffee in one hand, gloves in the other. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel behind. Didn't feel like I was trying to catch up to something lost. I felt ready. Later that week, I drove out to the cemetery with the photo tucked in my glove box. Not the one of me and Dad from Laverne. A new one. This one showed the full row of finished firewood racks. Sunlight catching on clean welds. The little metal tag I started adding to each one. Built by CJ. I parked under the old pecan tree, boots crunching through fallen leaves as I made my way up the gravel path. Dad's headstone sat in the same quiet patch it always had. Modest. Uncomplicated. Just like him. I brushed off the leaves, then knelt down and set the photo by the base. "Here's what I've been working on," I said, my voice softer than I expected. I sat there for a while. Told him about the order. About the racks. About Wyatt showing up and how I didn't flinch. About Miss Laverne and Tina. About the house finally smelling like home. And about how I finally understood what he meant when he said, quiet doesn't mean small. I took off my gloves still warm from the drive and laid them on the grass next to the picture. Not to leave them. Just to feel the space between the past and the present. I don't think I ever thanked you, I said. For the garage. For the key. For not telling me everything. For letting me figure it out when I was ready. The wind rustled the tree above, scattering a few pecan husks onto the ground. You were right, I whispered. I already knew how. I just had to remember. I slid the gloves back on and stood. Not with finality. Just forward. That night, I cleaned up the garage and flipped off the light like I always did. The smell of steel and cedar oil clung to my clothes. Inside the house, the picture of Mama and Dad sat on the mantel. Beside it, my own welding certificate. Just framed that morning. Tina insisted. I stood at the threshold for a moment, fingers brushing the light switch. And I realized, for the first time in my life, no one could take this from me. Not a man. Not a memory. Not even time. I didn't just have roots here. I was the root. Outside, the night air was cool. The porch light hummed low. I glanced over at my truck in the driveway. Still dusty from the yard run, but full of materials and promise. I picked up my keys. Felt the weight of them. The same one my daddy gave me. The same one I almost gave up on. I smiled. Then walked inside and whispered. I'm home.